From our 22 News Broadcast Center, this is 22 News in Focus.
Good Sunday afternoon. Welcome to 22 News in Focus. I'm Kate Walsh. It's been 1 year since the voters of Hampden County elected a new district attorney, Anthony Gulluni. Today on 22 News in Focus, we'll be looking at the changes he's made in office, as well as talk about newly created initiatives and community outreach programs. We'll also be discussing what's being done about crime, drugs, gangs, and other law enforcement issues that affect the residents of Hampden County. Later on in the program, we'll also be talking with Hampden County Sheriff Ashe about his collaborations with the DA and other law enforcement entities in the region. First, though, joining me now to discuss his first year in office is Hampden County District Attorney Anthony Gulluni. So thank you for joining us today.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Of course. So before we get into how this year has been, let's give this some context. What led you to become DA? What were you doing before this?
Well, I was a prosecutor. I was an assistant district attorney in the office, and I started working for Bill Bennett in 2009. And then as he left office and retired, Mark Mastriani was elected by the people of Hampden County, and I continued my work as a prosecutor under his administration. And then with much shock, I realized, and we all learned, that Mark, now Judge Mastriani, was up for a federal judgeship. And as that went on, I went through a process myself as to what I was going to do, and the idea of running came to me, and I thought I could offer something to the office. At 33 years old, I threw my hat in the ring, and I worked very, very hard, and with the support of a lot of people, including my friends and family, I was elected back last year in 2014, and that brings me here today. So it's been a remarkable experience to get here. Has
it been anything that you thought it would be, or more, or less, or different? How has the first year been?
It's been nothing I thought it was going to be. It's been just terrific, going back to the election victory, to my swearing in earlier this year in January. But the job is so vast and so diverse that I don't think anyone could have been prepared. I certainly wasn't prepared in certain senses for it. I knew the office, I knew the people, I knew the business, and I knew, most importantly, my initiatives and what I wanted to accomplish, which I think was critical. So I began with that in mind, but had to sort of weather these incredible surprises and everything that comes with that job. It was really really immense, but getting through it and having great people around me and the support again of those family and friends and the people of Hampden County, I think has gotten us through this first year quite well.
So can you elaborate on some of the challenges you might have faced this past year?
Well, there were, I think, some internal challenges that are just organic to the job, and there were kind of external things as well. I mean, very unfortunately, this first part of the year, we had a number of homicides, 12 or 13 in the first few months of the year in Holyoke and in Springfield. And that, of course, was a much higher rate than what is normal. So by statute, the district attorney runs all homicide investigations in the county. So I really had to get my team ready and get myself ready to handle those most important investigations, and we really did a terrific job making arrests on many of those cases, and very confident about the prosecutions to come. But internally, 170 people in that office administratively. We made some changes coming in through the process of my transition coming into office in January 7th, and wanted to be up and running and ready to go. So to get new people who hadn't been prosecutors, who hadn't been staff people, who were not familiar with the office was a big challenge, and just to get myself in that kind of phase of being district attorney and getting the process going and getting a start on those initiatives was really the first challenge. And again, the enormity, the diversity of the work there was really probably the first challenge, and just getting used to everything, like with any new job that one might experience.
And so what were some of the reasons for changing personnel when you got into office?
Well, I talked about this as a candidate. I really had, I think, a unique perspective having worked in that office. I was the only person in the race who had worked under Mark and had been in the office, was coming really directly from being a member of the staff of the DA's office in Hampden County. So I knew the people. I had worked at all levels, really, of the office. I had personal relationships with many people, had been around them professionally, and I had a vision of what I wanted to do. So those two things coupled together, I thought I had a very good means by which I could evaluate, and I had some people I wanted to bring in for new initiatives and for kind of a new direction, and it's worked out really fantastically. I mean, the people that have come on in this first year and some of the people who have been there. And we've got people, a couple who started back with District Attorney Matthew Ryan a long time ago, but many people who worked in the Bennett administration and many people who carried over to the Mastriani administration as well. So I think that coming together of some new people, some new ideas, a fresh perspective, along with people who had some institutional knowledge and some history have really served the county very well so far.
And in addition to that, you also personalized some positions. So prosecutors, for instance, you have specialized what they do in office, right, and what they do in the courtroom. So can you talk a little bit about that specialty process that you've added?
Sure, that was something I kind of brought to the office, and it was one of the ideas that I thought was going to really make us more effective and more efficient in the prosecutions we do. You know, having been there and seeing how people work and seeing the kind of inner workings of the office, particularly in our Superior Court where the most serious cases are prosecuted, I felt if we could, you know, being kind of low on resources here, and that's an issue I intend to address over my time as DA, but we really had to maximize our resources, and efficiency was very important. So I've taken all our prosecutors in Superior Court and put them into units where they can specialize in certain kinds of prosecutions on certain kinds of cases. And I think it allows people to take particular skill sets to a certain kind of case and also learn the kinds of cases and the detectives and police officers who work those kinds of cases and the issues that most commonly come up in those kinds of cases, so we can better serve the victims, we can better serve our communities in Hampden County in terms of domestic violence, specific prosecutions and investigations, a homicide unit, a gun and drug unit. So these prosecutors are really learning the trade in a very specific way, and I think it's already borne out effects and benefits to our work in the courthouse and to Hampden County in the short time it's been in existence.
It seems like when a new person goes into office, there's a long transition period to really get things up and running. But after just a year, it seems like a lot of things have really been up and running for a while now. So how were you able to do it so quickly?
Well, I'm proud of you and happy you have that opinion, Kate. I tend to think so too, and I hope the people of Hampden County see that as well. And it's incumbent on the position. I mean, you know, the wheels of justice in all our courts across the county are not going to stop for a new district attorney or any sort of transition. I mean, we had to respect the process, people's rights to speedy trials, those kinds of things, and the cases were going to keep coming. So it was really important to me in that transition I had before I was sworn in to be ready on that first day, to have staff members and prosecutors who were ready to pick up cases and continue to fight for justice in Hampden County and fight for public safety. So it was really that preparation period leading up to January 7th, and it was some programs and some ideas that I had that had to be implemented right away. And again, I'm so proud and so lucky to have the people around me in that office who worked so hard, who made a quick transition really possible and just continued success.
You were mentioning everyone has to have, you know, a speedy trial, a right to a speedy trial. So the Hampden County Hall of Justice is one of the busiest in the state, right? So how do you make sure that that's possible? How do you get all of those people through in a quick way, I guess?
A lot of hard work and really quality people who work as prosecutors, and we work in that regard in tandem with members of the defense bar who handle cases. As defense lawyers, we work with the probation department and judges to make sure that, you know, we're ready as lawyers presenting our cases. We put investigations together in a very timely way. But you hit on something that really resonates throughout our system, Kate, and that's the fact that if you really aggregate the numbers in Hampden County, we're the busiest district in the entire Commonwealth, and that includes Boston, that includes Worcester. And we're doing a lot with a little in terms of our resources, and that's one of my chief initiatives as district attorney is to bring the resources back to Hampden County, and I'm working in tandem in cooperation with many of our legislators here in Hampden County who go back to Boston every day and lobby for their constituencies. So we're working in cooperation to get the money for the office and for the system that it needs so we can really effectively prosecute all kinds of cases, and we can effectively identify people suffering from mental health issues and addiction issues and hopefully make the system as productive and effective as it possibly can be.
All right, and we'll be talking more about that after the break. Our conversation continues with District Attorney Anthony Gulluni. He'll be talking to us specifically about combating crime in Hampden County. You're watching 22 News in Focus. Welcome back to 22 News in Focus. Today we're talking with Hampden County District Attorney Anthony Gulluni about his first year in office. The Office of the District Attorney is one of the entities in our community responsible for public safety. The office prosecutes the crimes that occur in Hampden County as well as provides support for law enforcement and public outreach. So we're joined by Anthony Gulluni. Often when we're talking about homicides, reporting on it in the news, we mention, for example, in Springfield, police seem to always say that it had some relation to gangs or drugs. Now, those aren't problems that you can solve overnight, but what's being done to combat the gang problems and drug problems that lead to these crimes?
Well, it's really collaborations with my office and police departments, state police, federal agencies we have in this area to try to be preventative in our posture and how we deal with violent people, how we deal with criminal organizations. I put together earlier this year in May, which was when it really started, and we were looking down at the summer, realizing historical trends that crime tends to spike, street violence tends to spike. I put together the High Impact Player Strike Force, and that was with the cooperation of the U.S. Attorney's Office here in Springfield, the FBI, ATF, DEA, State Police, and the Springfield Police Department to say, let's identify this very small part of the population who is really driving violence, who are belligerent, incorrigible offenders, repeat offenders, people using guns irresponsibly and illegally. And let's try to get in front of those people and take them off the streets through quality investigations and quality prosecutions, and try to dismantle some of that criminal organization that breeds violence. So we've been very successful in doing that. The High Impact Player Strike Force continues to plod along, and we meet on a periodic basis and talk about the violent people. We share intelligence among agencies. So that's a preventative thing we do to try to identify those people who really drive violence. And that's one thing. I think smart prosecutions in my office, and again, identifying the people who are driving violence, who are using guns. I've established a philosophy in the office with what's really no tolerance on illegal guns. Of course, illegal guns in the hands of people who use them irresponsibly is at the heart of a lot of the violence we see and, of course, a lot of the shooting. So we've made a strong statement, I think, in prosecuting these gun cases as aggressively as possible, especially in the hands of folks who are repeat and violent offenders. So we're doing what we can on the prosecution side, but like you mentioned, it's a very broad problem. So what we do in terms of our outreach and our education with young people, especially in urban centers like Springfield and Holyoke, we have the chance to do a lot of that. And when I get to go out and talk to young people in schools, it's probably the brightest part of my day or week. And we talk about the dangers of violence, the dangers of drug use, the dangers of picking up a gun, and what positive things are out there. We try to expose these young people to success and show them through moot court programs and assistant district attorneys going into schools and our youth advisory board that there are good things out there for you, and that we're here in law enforcement to support you and keep you safe in your educational pursuits and other things. So it's really kind of a multifaceted attack on crime, and we're hopeful that we're having short-term, immediate success, and we're also going to have long-term success in getting to these kids before they make these poor decisions.
I remember a few months ago when the homicides seemed to be every weekend. As you were mentioning earlier, there was a period where it was many in a row, more than usual perhaps. And Springfield Mayor Dominic Sarno had said he was really frustrated with it, and he was urging trial judges to really crack down on these repeat offenders, maybe give them a higher bail or keep them in jail longer sentences. Is that possible? We haven't really heard your side of that. Is that possible that could happen, or is there something in the legal system where the judges have to do what they're doing and they're doing it right?
Well, to a large extent, our judges in Hampden County and across the Commonwealth do a terrific job, and they each bring their own perspective and their own analysis of a particular case and a defense background. But very often in the court system, we as prosecutors present cases and ask judges to hold defendants who we believe are violent, have tendencies, who should be held pursuant to the crimes they've allegedly committed at that stage. So we're often arguing for high bails, or we're asking for judges to hold defendants until their case is disposed. So I can certainly understand the frustration that comes with it, but that's the inherent tension of the system. But it's an important piece of what we do to make sure that people are safe. by the work we do in our courthouses. And you know, it's the responsibility of mayors and other elected officials, and to some extent the public, to speak up. I had an opportunity, really an unfortunate situation a few months ago, where a judge sitting in Holyoke made a decision to effectively release a defendant who had committed allegedly 2 shootings over the course of some time, shootings with victims, you know, violent situations out in the city of Holyoke. And I did in fact speak out. I spoke through media outlets and how frustrated I was, and I called it a failure of the system. So it's important for us in elected positions and for the people of Hampden County to speak out when they're dissatisfied by any part of the system. So I think that does resonate. I hope it has an effect on how the system works. But it's important that we continue to work hard and make sure that judges understand through the work we do in our courtrooms that there's a need to protect the people of Hampden County through the work they do and the work we do.
And often law enforcement says, you know, it's up to the neighbors to report something when they see it. But even when we go out and we try to speak with neighbors after something like that, they're very hesitant to talk to people. They don't want to be connected with it in any way. What's being done maybe to make them feel more comfortable and that there isn't any retaliation against them if they do report something?
It's a very difficult problem. It's a problem we really deal with at all stages of our work in the courthouse, when we need witnesses to come forward at the investigative stage to prove cases, and when we need witnesses once these cases come to trial to step up and stand out and sometimes point at a defendant and say, yes, this is the person who did whatever the offense charged is. So what we're doing in our office is really our community outreach work, and letting people know that law enforcement is here to protect you, is here to work with you, is here to make your streets safer, your community safer. And by getting out and speaking with people, I go to a lot of community functions. I speak with people all the time in my own neighborhood and try to just have a presence where people feel comfortable and they feel a sense of trust in law enforcement and in me as district attorney and the work we do. I also want to commend the city of Springfield, and in particular Commissioner John Barberi of the Springfield Police Department, Chief Newswanger in Holyoke. These departments are doing their best to do the same kind of community outreach, and what Commissioner Barberi has done in Springfield with the C3 policing program in 4 neighborhoods in the city of Springfield is really building those bonds with the people of those neighborhoods and introducing them to police and to law enforcement in a different way, not just as people with guns and badges and handcuffs, but people who are there to help them, to make sure that their kids are safe going back and forth to school, that they're safe in their homes, and really developing those bonds that will hopefully last for a long time. And when something happens in their neighborhoods, they feel a sense of responsibility to speak, and they feel a sense of comfort and trust that they can speak out and they'll be protected, and that the criminal justice system will work. And of course, we do our jobs in the courthouse every day to make sure that those people who come forward and the people who commit crimes, you know, face just consequences through the prosecutions we do, and if they're sentenced, they stay off the streets, and those witnesses feel safe in what we do and going forward, participating with law enforcement.
So now you're also collaborating with the Massachusetts National Guard. Can you talk about that collaboration and why you're doing that?
Absolutely. It's a new program, and actually it's really the first of its kind across the country, and certainly in Massachusetts. And we introduced this idea to the public just a couple weeks ago with Major General Scott Rice, who is the commander of the Massachusetts National Guard. He's a 2-star general. He came out to Springfield to introduce this with me at a kind of ceremonial signing of our memorandum of understanding. And it's basically bringing a National Guardsman into the district attorney's office in our state police unit. I have a group of state troopers who work at my direction in doing homicide investigations and other complex investigations, including narcotics investigations. So we've brought in the resources of the National Guard in the Department of Defense into my office to fight crime at a local level. And it's a very unique program, and the general's very proud of it. He's excited about it, as am I, and we think it's going to really breed results through those resources and that very particular skill and training of the National Guard in criminal analysis, and the types of things they can bring to my office in narcotics investigations that are really going to make a difference. And it's part and parcel of, you know, a theme or a philosophy I've tried to put in place with the High Impact Player Strike Force. bringing the National Guard in, that we want to use all resources possible. And if we all work together, we're greater together than we are separately working for public safety. So we've had great success with the High Impact Player Strike Force and working with the federal government there. And this is a new program, and I think it's going to do great things for the people of Hampden County, and I'm very excited about it.
And real quick, do any other towns or cities or counties do this type of thing already with the National Guard?
No, in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, it's a first, and nationally, Major General Scott Rice was talking a bit about it with me. It's happened once or twice, but this is really the pilot program. And the National Guard nationally is hopeful that this is going to be successful, as I believe it's going to be, and it could be replicated in other parts of the country and other parts of Massachusetts. So it's really a new program. It's very innovative, and I think it's going to do great things.
Wow. No pressure, though.
Yeah, we'll see. Sure.
All right, the District Attorney's Office doesn't just prosecute crimes. We'll be discussing outreach programs that protect some of the most vulnerable people in our communities when we return. You're watching 22 News in Focus. You're watching 22 News in Focus. Today we're talking with Hampden County District Attorney Anthony Gulluni. The opioid epidemic has hit hard in our region and across Massachusetts. Many people are finally recognizing this is a problem touching thousands of families. So can you briefly give us an update on what's being done right now and what the focus is on combating this epidemic?
In my position as district attorney, the focus is twofold. I think the first focus in my core function is law enforcement. And I talk a lot about this in terms of the work we do on the supply side of this problem. I believe that our enforcement of laws around drug trafficking and drug distribution is a very important aspect of this fight. And we're doing that work and focusing on the people who are really profiting from addiction. And taking advantage of the people who are suffering from the disease of addiction. And there's a real distinction there that is important to understand in the work I do, and I think in the public's perception of the work law enforcement is doing, that there are people suffering from addiction, there are people profiting from it. So we're focusing on the prosecution and the enforcement of the laws around those people profiting from addiction, but in our court system as well, when we're identifying people suffering from addiction, people coming into our courthouse and committing crimes as a result of that addiction, we're doing our best to give them the resources they need in terms of training, in terms of treatment and rehabilitation through any sort of probation sentence. Of course, Sheriff Ashe, over the years and to present day, does just absolutely terrific work working with people and giving them opportunities and the sort of treatment that they need to beat the addiction and get back on their feet. So we work in tandem with the sheriff and his staff in doing that and providing people with what they need, hopefully to rehabilitate. But our community outreach work is very robust in this area as well. I frequently go out to some of these coalitions, school coalitions. I was in East Long Meadow just a couple weeks ago with Chief Mellis there, speaking to a large audience actually on, I think it was a Wednesday night, mostly parents who are just so concerned about the vulnerability of their children with this being such a prevalent problem. So we're talking a lot about awareness. And for parents to understand that this problem is everywhere and drugs are everywhere, all across this county, and they have to be aware of their children, their children's friends, and looking for certain signs that might be leading to addiction or leading to drug use. So we focus a lot on that prevention side of it, but we're working to get medicine return boxes in police departments. That's an initiative of my office with Sheriff Ashe, which I'm very excited about. It would put basically drug take-back bins in police departments 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. I had the chance to work with the DEA just a couple months ago on a drug take-back day at Central High School in Springfield, and I was shocked about how many people were coming with just bags of unwanted and unused prescription medication. I think they took in something like 1,000 pounds of prescription medication just in one afternoon in one place in Springfield. So that idea kind of came to us, and we said, the sheriff and me, let's put these drug take-back bins there for people to access all the time. And we can get these prescription medications out of people's medicine cabinets, away from people's homes where people can access them and misuse them. So there are many things we're doing in terms of enforcement and prevention to do our part in hopefully getting people to first avoid drug use and addiction. And if they're at that place, we're hopeful to get them in a better place and get them well. We're hopeful a drug court is going to come to Hampden County very soon. I know some money has been allotted by our legislature, the good work of our legislators working on that issue and making sure the folks in Boston understand that there's a real need here out west in Hampden County. And I think a drug court in our system in Hampden County would go a long way for people who are suffering from addiction, who are identifying as addicts, to go and be in a separate stream of cases in a drug court. And there we can supply them with the treatment and the rehabilitation resources that they need to get well again.
And speaking about rehabilitation resources, it seems like there's a shortage of treatment beds or treatment centers for these people to go. Is there anything in the works to maybe expand on that so people have somewhere they can recover and get treatment?
I've been supportive of Governor Baker's bill. It's a package of things that addresses many facets of this issue, but it does supply more resources to the institutions, the organizations who provide beds for people suffering from addiction. So I'm supportive of that. I think that's something that's going to have to come through the legislature. But what we're doing here is trying to allow for these organizations that provide beds, to get the resources they need. And I think the awareness, fortunately for Channel 22 and many other media outlets, are bringing the awareness of this issue, and that's going to be a part of the solution.
Now, the addiction center that's currently in Holyoke, there's going to be a future location for that facility, but so far we're not sure where that's going to be. Could you update us on that at all and what's going on with that? I know we'll talk to the sheriff about that as well. But.
Yeah, that's a better question, better posed to the sheriff. The sheriff, established the correctional center on addiction many years ago, and it's saved probably thousands of lives and helped many more people battle that addiction and win. And wherever it is, it's going to do great things for many years to come. It's one of the sheriff's many accomplishments that we benefit from, the people of Hampden County, and certainly that I do as district attorney, and being able to sentence people to something having to do with rehabilitation and going to the correctional facility to work on that addiction. It's such an important piece of the array of options we have in law enforcement to help people become well and beat addiction.
All right, now let's switch gears a little bit. Talk about some of the outreach programs that you offer maybe to the elderly or youth who are most at risk.
Sure. In terms of the elderly, we have a very busy elder abuse unit where we have prosecutors and staff members who go out and work on the prevention side, but also work on those unfortunate situations when elders are the subject of some sort of abuse, financial, physical, or otherwise. But we have a program called Education Against Senior Exploitation, EASE we call it, and it's members of my staff and sometimes myself. We get a chance to go out and speak to groups of seniors about the scams that are out there, whether it's by phone calls or by internet, whether it's how to avoid physical abuse, how they can stay well and stay active and avoid situations in which they're most vulnerable. But we go out to senior centers, care facilities, and talk with groups of seniors about these issues and what we see in law enforcement. It's been very effective to help them to avoid financial abuse, physical abuse by caretakers and others. So the prevention side is something that I focused on in this first year in office to a great extent, and we think that's going to have benefits immediately and long term. With regard to youth, we have a great youth advisory board in my office where we bring in kids from all over the county. We have 2 or 3 kids from almost every high school in the county who come in and work with us throughout a whole school year. And it's really kind of a two-way street where they get to work with us and see what the DA's office does, and members of my staff, prosecutors, and people in my community outreach unit alike. But we also benefit from hearing from those kids in different parts of the county, a county that's very diverse, about the issues in their schools, whether it's internet abuse, or whether it's bullying, or whether it's certain kinds of drug use. So we really have those ambassadors, those diplomats, to spread the message of law enforcement and what the DA's office is doing, but we're also hearing from them what the current issues are, and that makes its way all the way up to me and my staff, and we can better focus our work in prevention and prosecution based on that. And we have very many things we do in going out to schools and adopting classes and doing mock trial programs with kids. And again, that's probably one of the most satisfying things I get to do, to see these young people engage with us and learn from the work we do and be able to give them a better sense of what their future can be.
Very interesting. So in addition to continuing these programs next year, What other goals do you have that you hope to accomplish in your second year in office?
Well, I mentioned one of the biggest goals, I think, that would really resonate throughout our system and I think do great things for the people of Hampden County, and that's a financial goal to hopefully work on, through our legislators, getting some sort of resources that we need to help us do our jobs better. That's a long-term big goal that I talked about last year and I continue to work on, but it's continuing to build a staff, it's continuing to evolve and be able to adapt and really predict the problems that we're facing. It's certainly working on the opiate problem and getting better and establishing more programs with people like Sheriff Ashe and other leaders in law enforcement and in elected office. You know, I hope we have a good year in being able to prevent crime. I think the pieces I put in place in terms of forming a foundation this year, Kate, I think is going to benefit me next year, benefit the county next year, and for many, many years to come. So I'm looking forward to my second year, and this first year has gone by so quickly that I'm excited for what we're going to do in years to come for sure.
Excellent. Thank you very much, District Attorney Anthony Gulluni, for joining us today. And we'll be right back on 22 News in Focus with Hampden County Sheriff Michael Ashe. Welcome back to 22 News in Focus. Today we're talking about public safety and the services the Hampden County District Attorney's Office offers. We spoke with the District Attorney Anthony Gulluni himself about what he's accomplished and what's been challenging in his first year in office. And joining me now to discuss these collaborations as well as other programs at his department is Hampden County Sheriff Michael Ashe. Sheriff Ashe, thank you so much for being with us today.
Yeah, real honor to be here. Yeah, thank you, Kate.
So, you know, it's interesting because this was DA Gulluni's first year in office. This is going to be your last year in 2016 in office after many, many years. So how has it been in all of the years in office that you've served in Hampden County?
Well, I just always feel, if you will, blessed or have a great sense of gratitude, you know, for the people that are showing that kind of trust in me. And I just been have this opportunity of having a great challenge to obviously be a pioneer in corrections. I like to feel that myself and the staff, if you will, just haven't, if you will, lock people up or just run a warehouse, that we really have looked at the aspect of what a profile of a typical inmate and really put together very focused, intense strategies on how inmates can, if you will, get the tools while they're incarcerated to get back out into society and turn their lives around. And one of the keys as well, Kate, is just isn't being that fortress in the woods or being isolated, but really zeroing in on maximizing the resources in the community. And so it's with law enforcement, with nonprofits, with citizens, and really bringing everybody together, because crime is everyone's issue, and if you will, it takes a village. And I think that's what we're all about. And so I would just answer your question, a great sense of gratitude. You know, the people have shown faith and trust in me, and I've always really tried to pull that. That meant a lot to me. And, you know, really trying to bring, if you will, that professional excellence to our work. And I think that's been my focus from day one, you know, trying to hire great people, trying to put tremendously accountable programs in place, make sure inmates weren't if you will, playing a game or manipulating the system, as we know, but really zeroing in on bringing that kind of intensity and letting them know we're all business and there's no games here.
Yeah, and we'll talk about all the aspects as to how you've done that over the years and right now. But first, what is your relationship with the district attorney? Where do you work together? What do you do together as a collaboration in the county?
Well, I think we just seen, you know, the district attorney, if you will, bringing forth that passion, the energy, real focus in terms of work. I go back with the Gullunis, particularly his father, to when I first became sheriff in 1975. And we did that profile, and it clearly showed that 93% of the inmates have no marketable skills. So one of the things that we did was we looked to the community, because we didn't really have any money. We didn't have any resources. And at that time, his father, Frank Gulluni, was a real expert. He was a specialist, not only just in terms of our city or our county, but nationally, in terms of bringing very sophisticated vocational programs to our area. And and he would obviously go out into the community and research, dealing with employers, digital, all these great companies that were working in our area, and then would put together a training program and so on. So Frank, his father, we put together a program in the old coal bin at York Street in a machine shop, and that was our first program. So at that time, he operated this Massachusetts Career Development Center. It was known nationally, and so I was really honored. So that's the beginning. I also went to school with Anthony's father, Frank, and he was a good athlete and a very good student, went on to Westfield State. So we've always had this relationship. So when Anthony talked about running, I just felt that sense of friendship and an investment in Frank, because I knew of the character and commitment and dedication that the Gullunis have to our area. I mean, even before then, his mother obviously was a career lady at Milton Bradley. I know she hired many people that came from Italy to our area, and but just the whole Gulluni family is just has a great sense of community and a great sense of Springfield area. So I just think it's terrific. And then to see, Anthony, if you will, taking the helm, as our chief law enforcement official and doing what he's doing. And I'm particularly excited about this high crime strike force that he's put together. I just think what a great way to start, letting the criminal element, okay, these people that are toting guns, gangs, making profit on drugs, exploiting our young people, very pathological kind of things, and really let them know that that our DA and a law enforcement team are all business. And then for them to be creative and go out and look to the National Guard Army in terms of bringing in, quote, their technical expertise to further enhance and focus in on this whole area. I just think it's terrific, and I'm very proud of Anthony. And in fact, one would say, geez, maybe I'll stick around, and continue, because it's exciting. It really is, because again, that's what it takes. It takes a team, and that's why I'm so honored to work with Anthony, because he gets it. He understands. Plus, he brings the balance. On one hand, you heard him speak about this high crime strike force, okay, and letting that criminal element know that there's no longer any dancing or playing games in our community, that he's going to mobilize all the forces to bring, if you will, harm, if you will, to this group, and they got a light on it. But on the other hand, he also sees the disease, if you will, of alcoholism and opiate and drug use, and wanting to do something about that. And he talks about that, and I think we're all excited about, hopefully in 2016 with the drug court. And quite frankly, he's always been very, very supportive of our work, at the Sheriff's Department. So it's just, I think that's what the public wants to see. They want to see us all working together in behalf of fighting crime, and that's what's exciting, because no one agency can do this. It takes a total team. And as I said earlier, crime is everyone's issue. And so it's just great. And so it's very exciting.
Have you noticed any challenges in trying to collaborate on these new programs when it comes to combating opioid addiction in Hampden County?
Well, I think first of all is, we've been in the forefront of combating this since 1985. I was always honored when Governor Dukakis sensed within his own family the disease of alcoholism, and then plus with the drive-in under the influence laws that went into effect because of his leadership, and it spiked the incarceration rate. He then sat down with his, quote, team, and they devised putting together the an addiction centers, one in the east and one in the west. And so I was very honored that we, as a Sheriff's Department, were the first Sheriff's Department to take this on back in 1985. We've had over 17,300 offenders go through the program. It's had a remarkable impact on helping people, if you will, but also helping our communities in terms of turning their lives around and so on. The one in the east was run by Department of Corrections, and it's no longer there. And I just feel they missed out in, quote, not having a local sheriff's department operate that are really closest to the people and closest to the law enforcement community and so on. But anyways, we're very proud of that. And of course, we've been forced to move because of the casinos. We're now temporarily up in Holyoke, and I really applaud Mayor Alex Morris and the chief up there, Noswanger, who are very receptive in helping us locate this. But I really want to come back to Springfield, and I'm really hoping in the very short period of time that we'll come up with a site in Springfield, because if you think about our Howard Street site that we had in the South End, we were at a close working relationship with the community, with the volunteers, with the business community, but more particularly with the recovery community. They've had a great impact on helping our folks that are incarcerated as they, if you will, get a new sense of their own strengths, their own sense of self-worth, their own sense of, geez, I can lick this. We match them up with people who've turned their lives around, and this has been a great influence to them as they go back into the community.
Certainly, and we'll talk a little bit more about that with Hampden County Sheriff Michael Ashe after this break. You're watching 22 News in Focus. You're watching 22 News in Focus. Today we've been talking about law enforcement in Hampden County. We began the program with an in-depth conversation with District Attorney Anthony Gulluni. And now we're continuing to talk with Hampden County Sheriff Michael Ashe. So before the break we were talking about the addiction center. It had to move because that's where the casino will be built. It's currently in Holyoke. There was some controversy about it possibly being built in the north end of Springfield. Can you talk a little bit about the future of this center and the importance of it? I know you mentioned that briefly before the break as well.
Yeah, I think first of all, you know, I was very sensitive, you know, about the people in the North End, and I could see that this was something that they really reacted to in terms of not my backyard. But I know it didn't have to do really with the program. I know they really respect and admire, you know, the work that we've done. You know, they just felt that they had enough, you know, in terms of programs there, and there's a lot of pride that they have in the North End, and as they call it, it's their 16 acres, if you will, you know, in terms of work being done. So in recognition of that, I just really, out of respect for them, want to pull back. But I am pleased that we went back out to bid, and my hope is that within the next, if you will, months, that we can look at some site in Springfield. And so that's something we're working on, and I really feel that this is the right thing. And I particularly, I mentioned Springfield, not to take anything away from other areas, but we have built up, if you will, a great deal of support from the recovery community. We like it in Springfield. Of course, you know, if you will, a good 65% of the offenders are from Springfield. And so this works out very well in terms of close to the bus stops, close to work, and close to, if you will, maximizing the resources in the community. So we're excited, and like I say, we've had this sort of pioneering effort in substance abuse since 1985, and we're really going to build on this now in terms of, particularly now with the opiate epidemic. You know, we're very pleased. We just recently applied for a $250,000 grant with and Secretariat of Public Safety, Dan Bennett. He's coming to our facility on Friday. We're excited about that. And $150,000 of that $250,000 is for purchasing beds in the community. So following treatment that we can reach out. The other $100,000 is to hire caseworkers to help them link up, if you will, with all the different agencies in the community, and really helping them in every way we can to sort of make it.
And where would those beds be located? Would there be room in the addiction center that exists right now in Holyoke, or would they be dispersed throughout other programs that already exist?
Yeah, you know, if you look back really, Kate, one of the keys that we're always doing is trying to maximize those resources. I mean, for example, take like Providence Hospital, Pathway. There's a tremendous program. They've been such an asset to us over the years. I just want to acknowledge them and so on. The Phoenix House, we started with, if you will, 5 beds. We're now up to 15 beds on an ongoing basis that we're purchasing and working with. The work that Kathy Wilson's doing with Behavioral Health Network, I think, is just tremendous, not only in terms of Springfield, but also she's looking to expand up to Greenfield, 42 beds in that area as well. But again, I think all of us, as the DA has said, we're all pulling together to try to encourage in a positive way to help people, with this problem and so on. So
yeah, it's unfortunate that these beds will be needed, but they're good to be there for people who need them, right? It's kind of.
And Kate, there's always more we can do within the Sheriff's Department. Okay, remember the addiction center. The only access to it was because people had to commit a felony to gain access to it. Okay, that's unacceptable. Okay, and so I think what we're really trying to do is with this drug court is look for diversionary kind of programs. And my friend Sheriff Frank Cousins is really doing a great job down there in terms of working with the judiciary and looking at alternatives. And for example, here we have this wonderful program, this 13-week program that we have, and one has to commit a felony to gain access to it. And versus having it be a day program, or it could be a residential program, and continue without findings. Okay, we can obviously establish 30-day programs. Okay, to help inmates. So there's all kinds of ways by coming together to be creative to help people, but particularly try to keep people out of the system, if you will, particularly those ones that we know are not violent or going to be a threat to public safety, but have the disease and need help and are motivated to get the help. That's what we want to be there for, just as I am when inmates want to turn their lives inside the correctional facility. Okay, the key thing is not inside, but when they get out. And that's one of the things I've really committed myself in terms of trying to, if you will, do everything I can to help them in the community regarding the jobs, the housing, and supportive services.
Okay, now we want to quickly talk about how your department is involved in community policing. There are some ways that people can get involved, so can you briefly talk about those programs?
Kate, I just wanted to highlight that I think one of the great things that's happening, okay, and the DA touched upon is that we all have a team. And Commissioner Barberry and the chief in Holyoke as well, Jim Neiswanger, what a job they're doing, okay? And again, particularly in Springfield, where John Barberry, under the direction of Mayor Sarno, he has now expanded on the C3 model that was so successful in the North End. It's now in 3 other, if you will, areas of the city. And they've committed, if you will, approximately 20 staff to this efforts. And just the other day, we had one of our quarterly meetings where police, corrections department, and so on, because we're located in 9 sectors in the city of Springfield, and as well as 5 in Holyoke. And just to give you an example, that one of my staff, Ed Case, is just doing a phenomenal job in Holyoke, and particularly in the South Holyoke area. And today they have over 300 kids involved, and we have 22 basketball teams. And what's happening is, if you will, volunteers are coming, if you will, from churches, from community groups, and so on, to help out and so on. So once the public sees that, they can gain confidence in terms of like the law enforcement people pulling together, that we can then reach out and, if you will, gain that trust, gain the support and help from the citizens. And this is what's happening. That's why I'm really excited. And this is the whole area of prevention. You and I know years ago, people were scared to come out of their homes because of the gangs and the violence and so on. So now we're taking back these neighborhoods, and that's what's so exciting. And this is a real credit to the law enforcement, but particularly to John Barberry and Chief in Holyoke, Jim Neiswanger.
Thank you so much, Sheriff Ashe, for being on the program today. And we'll be right back for 22 News in Focus with our last word. Today we've been discussing public safety and community involvement with Hampden County District Attorney Anthony Gulluni and Sheriff Michael Ashe. That's our program. We want to thank our guests for joining us, and thanks to you at home for watching. If you missed any of it, you can watch it in full on our website, wwlp.com. From all of us here at 22 News, we wish you a wonderful Sunday.